72 hours to learn a new stack, or miss your shot at breaking into tech. What would you do? I'm Johnny Prano. I switched careers and I did exactly that. 3 years ago, I was 39 years old. I was transitioning out of sales, still learning how to code, and then I lost my sales job. I was sending out about 20 applications a week, getting rejection emails left and right, no communication, complete silence. Then, in my daughter's father-daughter dance, I mentioned my projects to another parent. 3 months later, I get a text message. Do you know Angular? Do you know TypeScript? I had 72 hours to learn both technologies for the interview. And I'm about to show you exactly how I went from zero to hired, even if you don't know the tech. If you haven't seen my video about how I switched from being sales into software engineering, I'm gonna link that in the description below. Check out that video. It spills a little bit about where I came from, my background, and how I got to being a software engineer. So at the beginning, it was tough to learn a few of the new things, right? HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But I started small with like tiny little projects as I went. One of those first tiny projects was just a basic HTML bio page. There was no colors, there was no design, it was just HTML. It looked like a Word document, honestly. I used the basics of HTML, so like the H1 tags or H2 tags, which are heading tags, or like a P tag if you want to write a paragraph, an A tag if you want to put any links or anything like that in the page, and an image tag, which I wanted to just make it look a little bit nicer with what I knew. An image tag, I put a Chicago Bulls logo or something like that on my bio page because I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. One of the first real fun projects that I did was a Mad Libs game, which is super cool. If you're familiar with Mad Libs, it's a sentence, and within the sentence you'll have some blank words. It could be a noun, it could be an adjective, and it's just a fun game that I can use HTML and start building my CSS skills on there as well as my JavaScript skills. So that was one of my first real fun projects that I did. Of course, my kids were the testers, so they definitely enjoyed it. But even with those little basic projects that honestly it was just fun to learn and I felt like I was learning, I still felt like I had no experience. Like, who's gonna hire me, right? At 39 years old. It was very messy code. I was in the beginner phases, and it's just, that was what I thought. And if you haven't heard of this term already, imposter syndrome, it's a real thing. Sometimes that imposter syndrome makes you think like what you're practicing or what you're learning is not valuable because you haven't even done it yet, or maybe just you're too new, or you're just getting in your head, and it's a very real thing. But as much as I got into my own head, I just try to ignore it and I just try to push through it, right? Kind of like the Disney movie Luca. Get away from me, Bruno. You know, that little voice in your head. Just forget about it and just push through it. But still, regardless of how I felt, regardless of imposter syndrome, regardless of about me not having any experience at all, the one thing that I still did was just share my work. I shared it with everybody. I showed people my projects, my friends, my family, of course, neighbors. Anytime I attended a party, the conversation always led up to, hey, this little project out that I did. I created a Mad Libs game. I created a basic bio page out of HTML code. And that was what I was sharing to everybody. I made sure to make that a point. Because I was passionate, I was always talking about it. I even shared it at my daughter's father-daughter dance. There were some parents there, and that was just the thing to do. I wanted to make sure I showed everybody what I was working with because I like talking about it. The biggest lesson that I got, here was you don't have to be ready. You just got to be visible. I wasn't ready, but I definitely wanted to make sure that I talked about it, that I shared my project, the stuff that I was learning, and most importantly, what I was looking to pursue. With all that said, I do want to share a story with you guys because I felt like it was pivotal in my career, right? So the school that my daughters attend, they were having their annual father-daughter dance. The kids started playing, they were dancing, and it was just a little moment where parents just grouped together and just chatted a little bit. And it was, hey, how you doing? How's it going? How's it been? And one of the parents knew what I was working on and the transition that I was working on. I was in sales and moving into software engineering, and that was the ultimate goal that I wanted to do. And they just asked me, hey, how's everything going? And at that moment in time, I really had no updates. So all I had was literally my portfolio and my project. So I just pulled up my phone, I scrolled through, and I just showed them some of the projects that I did. And again, going back to the Mad Libs game, going back to the Disney Flippy card game that I made for my daughters. And even my portfolio itself was a project, right? And so I just showed them that, and they thought it was really cool. And I was passionate about talking about that. As I was talking, another parent passed by right behind us, just overheard what we were talking about, and just stopped me and said, hey, just wanted to ask you a couple of things, what you're working on. We exchanged numbers. We talked a little bit about my boot camp and the projects and just what I was looking to pursue. That was really it. I didn't think much of it, and the dance was over. We had fun. It was an amazing time, and we just went home. So the next day, here I go again, going forward, the next day and the next day, applying and applying, getting rejection after rejection. Did make a bit of progress and did happen to go to some interviews, which I bombed the first two. And I just took some notes each time and try to research what I didn't know so I can be ready for the next interview. But I just kept going and going. 3 months later, I get a text message. Hey, do you know Angular? Do you know TypeScript? And I had no idea who this was. Honestly, I just got a random text message. Think about it, this is 3 months later. I was at a park with my family and receiving this text message. I just looked at it and I was like, who is this? And all it said is, do you know Angular? Do you know TypeScript? We may have an opening. So we chatted a little bit more and I just said, I don't know this technology, but I do know React and I do have some existing projects that I can walk you through. They still gave me a chance and they said, hey, you know what? Let's just go ahead and interview. Today's Friday. Let's interview on Thursday this coming week. And let's just walk through your projects and what you have. Now, I felt I don't know this technology. I'm definitely not going to get it. This is just going to be like a little bit of waste of time because I just felt like I wasn't fit for it. So I had 72 hours to learn the tech stack or I just missed my shot completely. The time frame goes like this. I got the text on Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I was not in town. We actually flew out to Texas and we were part of a bridal party for a wedding. Came back Sunday night. Now, keep in mind that the interview was scheduled for Thursday. So I had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to figure this out. The next 3 days, I was just excited. I was scared. I was doubtful. I had a million thoughts in my mind. What do you do? How do you learn these things? Where do I start? Like the interview's on Thursday. What am I going to do? And it was just a scary thing. The reality was I still have a family. I still have obligations. I'm still taking my daughter to soccer camp or swimming classes. And I was still helping out as a TA in my boot camp. I didn't have the full day. I had a couple hours here and there. And to try to fit this in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it was scary. Okay, so this is how I broke down the 3 days. So for day one, I wanted to make sure that everything was set up on my computer, right? I opened up VS Code. I made sure that Angular was installed, TypeScript was installed, and just wanted to make sure everything was up to date. Now to do that, I had to go onto the documentation. I had to look up some YouTube videos just to make sure, because again, I did not know how to do any of that. I was still new and just still trying to get my feet wet and what I was doing. Once that was set up and running, I went on to Scrimba.com. If you guys saw my last video, I talked a little bit about Scrimba and how they teach their courses. I went on there. They had a TypeScript class, which I'll link in the description below. It was awesome. I learned about interfaces, I learned about enums, and just the features that TypeScript had. I definitely made tons of mistakes, right? It wasn't like I went in there and everything was awesome and easy to do. No, it definitely wasn't. And I just made a lot of mistakes. And I think that's what helped me learn a little bit more. It was just feeling those mistakes. I also caught a video on a Free Code Camp on their YouTube channel, and I will also link that in the description below. And I think that was a more updated TypeScript course that I took. The one that I originally took is completely outdated. So this one, I'll link it on there if you guys want to just take a look at it. And TypeScript is a superset of what JavaScript is. And later on in the future, I'm gonna make videos on what the differences are and make it a lot easier to understand. But ChatGPT, again, is super helpful. You're trying to figure out what certain things mean. Sometimes you get documentation and you read it and it's just a lot of fancy jargon. And I just wanted to know what it actually meant in relation to the stuff or my experience that I did in sales. What would this look like, or things like that, something that I can really understand. Day two, I focused completely on Angular. I went back into trying to find different resources, their documentations, little small projects. There is a YouTube Angular course that I took that pretty much helped me out on there. So I would say in the Angular format, it was, the bootcamp didn't teach Angular, they taught me React. And so this was a lot of self-taught things, and you're going to be doing a lot of that in the software engineering and tech world, learning a lot of these paths and learning a lot of these technologies on your own. So I focused on creating components, services, and different templates. I use the official docs, and like I said, sometimes there's a little rough, so always ChatGPT was there to help me out, break the concepts down so I can understand it. I try to build like small components, going back to a small bio page like I first started off with HTML, and I just wanted to use Angular and just see how things work, right? Whether I was breaking it, I was just trying to refix it. And again, I'm talking about this was like the most basic parts of Angular. Now, it was a bit tough to understand because I did learn React and I was still learning it. So jumping into Angular was just a flip of a switch and okay, now what does this mean? And how does this relate to what I was learning in React? Like what were the differences? Like what things did I have to know or what didn't I know? Then on day three, I was like, okay, what am I gonna do now? And so I figured what's the best way to learn? And I always tell my daughter this, she loves soccer and she hopes to be a professional soccer player, which is amazing. And I always tell her, you're not gonna get that move or you're not gonna learn that skill until you practice it. And when you practice it, then your body's gonna feel, right? How you kick the ball, how you juggle the ball around. And in that same mindset, how can I do that? The number one thing that came to mind was, let me just build a project, right? And what project do I build now? So I did a little research and I did find what the company was all about that I was going to interview for on Thursday. And it's a big hotel company. And so I used that. I was like, okay, what can I build? A small project using Angular, using TypeScript, the things that I just learned, and implement it using something that the company itself works with. I built a random hotel landing page using these technologies. And I think I called it Lux Hotels. And it had a nice hero page. Hero page is when you go into the main page and you see a big picture kind of displaying. It's what makes the page stand out. Then I saw their subtitles. I saw what they had. They had like little sections with little cards, and you can book a room and choose your date and all these different things. And so I decided to build a small landing page to replicate what that would look like. Of course, I polished it up a little bit. I used some of the CSS Flexbox, some UI implementations just to fit my decisions, my style, my design. And I tried to do it as best as I could. I wanted it to be perfect, but I didn't have much time. I stayed up late. I was trying to get this done. I got super tired, and I know I had to get up to do this interview in the morning. I finished it as best as I could, and I just uploaded it to Git. And if you don't know what Git repository essentially is where you put your projects up to review, to showcase it, and work as a team sometimes on there. So there's a lot more into it, but just a quick overview of what that is. Now, after those 3 days of super intense learning, smashing it into a couple or 2-3 hours a day, it was time, and it was interview day. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video. I just wanted to drop in right now and let you know that I'm sharing with you the exact resources that got me hired as a software engineer. It's completely free. The link's in the description. I'm talking about the free resources that I use, the paid resources that I use, the dev tools, the project that got me hired, and some of the interview strategies that I did. Links in the description. Grab it free. Let's get back to it. Okay, so here we go. I wake up, I have my coffee, I am super nervous. Now this was all virtual, so I had to log into Zoom and make sure I set that all up. I pulled up my project, I had it on screen. On my desk, I have 3 different screens on here. So I have my left screen, my main wide, ultra wide screen, and then my laptop to the right. And so I made sure to have my project on one of the screens, my resume on the other, my Git repository on the other one. And I had some notes that I had taken just so that I can recap and just prepare myself for this interview. I get the call, I log into Zoom, and we start the interview. They do the introduction, I do my introduction. And already in my mind, I went back to Friday when I got asked, do you know Angular, do you know TypeScript, and how the conversation went, and me saying, no, I didn't. I feel like I wanted to take over what I was going to be interviewed on. So I knew I had my older projects. They dealt with React and the complete different tech stack and languages than what they were asking for. So before like we can do anything else, I jumped in and I just said the first thing that came in my head. And that was, hey, I made this project the last couple days. I want to share it with you. It's with Angular, it's with TypeScript, and just show you guys and see what you guys think. They agreed to it, which that was like a load off my shoulders because all this information was just fresh out of my mind, right? I shared my screen. I then had my project up and running, and I deployed it to Netlify so you can easily just have it online already. And I wanted to show that I was able to do that. And then I had my Git repository on the right side, just ready for anything that they wanted to see. I also had VS Code open, ready to go in case they had more or further questions. I just wanted to be prepared in general. So here I go. I walk them through the page. I walk them through my ideas. I said Lux Hotels. I showed them my concept, the little additions of like buttons and links and a calendar view and a Flexbox card section with all these different hotels. And I just made up names for these hotels and found random pics from Splash.com, and I just used that in my project. There was a few questions that they asked me and we walked through, and they just more so wanted to see my thought processes, why I made certain decisions for certain elements of this page. It wasn't really just about the code itself, it was just more the thought process. They did ask me a few questions about my other projects that I talked about using React in my portfolio, and specifically one blog site that I made. It was just a basic blog site that I just wanted to use Flexbox on because I was curious on how that works. Now, the number one question that they did have for me after I shared all my projects, including the one that I had just made, was how long did it take you to make this project? I told them I started on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. If I were to combine all the hours together, it was about 7 to 8 hours worth of time that I had to learn TypeScript, had to learn Angular, and then just figure out what project to build and then actually build a project, let alone all the mistakes that I had to fix and research the things that I just didn't know. And what I got was like, oh, that's awesome. That's cool. Now, I didn't know what that meant, but it felt good, and I just continued on with the interview. So after that, we talked a little bit more about salary and a few things, the benefits, the normal typical stuff about interviewing for a job. 2 hours later, I get a phone call, and they offered me the job the same day. It wasn't about the code itself, even though that's still important. It was about showing I can learn fast. It's about speaking to the project itself, what I thought about, how I came across my decisions, and just how I communicated it. Looking back at this crazy journey from doing a tiny project to getting hired in 3 days, there are 5 key things that really made a difference. These aren't hacks or shortcuts. They're real steps that I went through that after thinking about helped me stand out, even when I didn't know the tech. And for sure I wasn't ready. Step 1, build projects, even tiny ones. It doesn't matter what kind of project you build. There's a lot of resources online. There's some that you can ask ChatGPT on, and just find resources that tell you what little projects you can make. Find something that you're interested in, because that's how you're gonna learn more. You're gonna be passionate about actually doing the project. And even when things get frustrated, you're still gonna do it. Questions are gonna arise as you're doing these projects that you may not know when you're just looking at a tutorial or reading some documentation. The real learning comes when you're actually doing the work and you're actually doing that project and you run into these situations that make you research it. Remember, projects give you real problems to solve, and it did for me. Step 2, share everything. Share all your work. Share your projects. Talk about it to everybody. You never know who's listening. Go on LinkedIn, type in an email. Hey, how are you? This is what I do. It doesn't matter when you're at family parties or you attend a meetup. Just share what you work, share what you're proud of. Reinforce your learning. I always say, even if you're not even coding itself and you're just taking 15 minutes to talk to somebody about what you're working on, all that information that you are learning stays in your head and it just helps in the learning process. Again, you never know who's listening, and even more so, who's hiring. Step 3, apply relentlessly. Now, you can do whatever your capacity allows you to do. Me, I was told to do 40 apps a week, and I couldn't do that. I really tried, but I didn't have that much time. So what I did, I felt like I did significantly enough, but I did do 20 apps a week, or at least I tried. And when you do apply, ignore a lot of those descriptions that say you need 2 to 3 year experience, or you need 1 to 3 years experience. I honestly applied regardless of what it said. Now, if I dabble a little bit in the technology, that was a plus. But even if I didn't know enough, or I just wasn't ready, I still did it. Apply even if you're not fully qualified just yet. Because when you get to the interview, and if you do get an interview, you never know what the outcome's gonna be. So why not? The worst they can say is no, right? And then you learn from it. You gather all the questions that you received in this interview, take notes, and get ready for the next one. Step 4, network beyond applications. Honestly, the real opportunities come from conversations. I'm talking about real conversations, not just the job boards. Make yourself available. Go to a meetup, or try to attend some Zoom calls online and just introduce yourself. Again, you will never know who's listening and who's hiring. Step 5, stay ready for the opportunity. Even though I wasn't ready, I still made sure to take notes, research things that I just didn't know. After I did an interview, I wrote down the questions and I went to ChatGPT and I read some documentation. I looked up YouTube and I just made sure that I was ready. I had my portfolio up and ready with my projects that I did. I had a little note in my phone that I can just open it up and just show people what I was working on. And even if I wasn't working on something particularly, I had my phone available with just things related to coding itself. But that's one thing that I wanted to make sure was I had the ability to learn fast and learn as much as I could when I could with the time that I had. With those 5 steps in mind, I want to talk directly to those that are just like me, starting late, switching careers, raising a family, doubting if this is even possible, have full-blown imposter syndrome. If you're over 30 and 40, you are not too late to start on this journey. You're not behind at all. You have more experience than a lot of people. I had a lot of experience and I used that to my advantage. I had sales experience, communication experience. I had interactions with a lot of different customers and a lot of different employees. I had a team and I had all these skills, selling skills, teaching skills. You have a work ethic, you have life experience, and you have problem-solving skills more than a lot of people. I built my tech career while my kids were asleep, while I woke up early in the morning, when I had extra time, right after soccer practice, right after swimming practice. Any moment that I had, whether it was 15 minutes, 10 minutes, my wife helped me out with all of this. She was supportive. She was awesome and really pushed me, motivated me. And I did all this while transitioning from a sales job that I lost to TA work to then landing a job. If I can land a software engineering role with no CS degree, 3 days to learn a tech stack while raising a family of 4 and a dog, you can absolutely build your freedom-focused life too. Now, I also have a free guide on the exact resources that I used that got me hired as a software engineer. I'm gonna link that in the description below. If you haven't seen my last video on how I switched careers into software engineering, the video is right here. It kind of explains a little bit about what my background was, where I started in sales, and how I actually went into software engineering. If you found this valuable or something I said just inspired you and motivated you, hit subscribe as I'm growing my YouTube journey here and just learning new things with you as well. Drop a comment, tell me what you're working on, tell me where you are in your journey. Let's just build this community together, and I'll see you in the next one.